Hi, I'm Godin and welcome back to BG Tips, episode 5. So I hope you've been following along from the kit list video. We're working our way through that list and today we're going to be talking about tools and spares. So this is a long list of items which I've collected over time from having many problems. You learn how to solve problems by having problems and then you know next time how to solve it. So many years of experience and kind of compiled this kit together. Yours also grow over time. I hope you don't have as many problems as me and we can cover some of those off and you'll be prepared if they do happen. We also have another video talking about SOS kind of survival and how to kind of fix your bike video and how to get out of trouble, but I'll cover a few top tips along the way. Top of the list, we have a multi-tool. So a multi-tool is kind of your go-to object. You have to go with a multi-tool. You can't, any trip, take an Allen key set. So on here, it has to cover all the Allen keys and all the tools that your special bike covers. You can't rely on a friend to carry them for you. They might have an 8mm, but no, you have to carry one yourself. You might be separated at some point. You might get lost. You might have to go back. You might have some trouble. So you need to be able to get out of that trouble, be able to have your own tools with you. So on here, make sure you've got an 8mm. Because some pedals actually run an 8mm to do them on and off, not just a 6mm. So some Allen key sets will stop at 6mm. If you do have these kind of pedals, make sure you go to 8mm on the Allen keys. The other one that's kind of particular nowadays, because everyone's running them, disc rotors. So the bolts on the disc rotors use a special star key, and that's a T25. Also a lot of new modern rear mechs use them as well. So a T25, make sure you have it. Make sure you have all the special star nuts that covers your bike in particular as well, because things are changing all the time. Oh, quick top tip. If you get stuck somewhere because your cleat and the bottom of your shoes come loose and you've lost the bolt, then take out one of the disc rotor bolts, screw it in. You've still got 5 of the 6 left, so your brakes are running sweet, and you can still ride home because your cleat will have 2 bolts in it. Top tip so far. The other real key one on a multi-tool is going to be the chain tool, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. So over the years, I've carried lots of different tools with me. This is just a bit of, like, I don't know, 1% of them. But these are some key ones just to show you what I've been carrying over the times. A Leatherman with a massive pair of pliers. We thought we had to carry this with us because once we couldn't get the cable end off a gear cable, change gear cable. We just kind of got stuck. The other one is also to bend back rotors if they get bent. And it's quite useful in certain ways, but it weighs a ton and it's huge. It just didn't earn its purpose, and I think actually a few times it's kind of a few knives have snapped off. So yeah, not done so well for me. I then carried around a lighter weight one, which was even the more worse idea because it's not as good as the stronger one. But I have to say, it did the trick. This was a Gerber, that was a Leatherman. But what I did end up kind of going upon is a Lesign multi-tool here. I don't know what number this is. I'll try and link it below for you guys. This has covered most things for me. It has a pretty decent chain tool attached to it. It has every Allen key size I need. Has my Torx. A Moan. I always have a Moan, so I often able to carry 2 Allen key sets. I probably carry these 2 with me on the bike. These are really bendy and really small. And once they wouldn't get into my rear mech to adjust the limit screw, which is a pretty big pain in the arse. And then it's got a really good kind of flat bladed screwdriver, which can act as kind of a wedge when you have to separate your disc brake calipers. If they get stuck, you can push the pistons back, so you can wedge that in. It's a real good shape for that. It also has a bottle opener on there somewhere. But it also has a couple of spanners. It also has spoke tools on it. But the winning thing for me at the time was it has a knife, which is quite lethal. I've cut many a sausage and many a thing with it. You try not to use it because it's the greasy one. But the annoying one is, though, if you're trying to use an Allen key and you've got a giant knife in the way, so it's quite dangerous. So I try to always run the cover on top of it, but it's quite difficult. So I do recommend it, but definitely not a winner. This one's a Crank Brother one. I don't know what number that is either. I'll have to find it out for you. But that's been a real old one for me. Done very well. The chain tool is a bit stuck now, not so great. So those coupled up with this little bad boy. So this is by Toe Peak, which is actually a proper dedicated chain tool, which if you notice, these are all so small and fiddly. So they're quite hard to use. Oop. But this one here, with the bit that's on the floor, it's actually quite good leverage, a really decent pin on it, and it's still nice and small and lightweight to take with me. I'll cover chain tool breaking in another video, and how to get yourself out of trouble. But for the moment, just say you have to carry a chain tool. If you don't know how to use it and you're stuck in the wild, you're going to learn very quickly how it might work. So, and also, I'll cover it later on. So yeah, that's for the moment. Multi-tools covered. Next on the list is inner tubes. So these are a pain. They're huge, especially when you're running 29 tyres. These don't even fit my bike properly because mine are 3 inches wide. So the inner tube for it is like this, tractor size. These go up to 2.4, but I tell you what, they'll stretch if you need to. If you're a gravel bike rider and you're running 700 by 40, don't forget a 28 would maybe stretch into it. So if you want to carry something really small, carry a size down in width, obviously the right diameter, and it will always inflate. If you are stuck, yes, a 26-inch inner tube will go in any size tyre. Just have to wedge it in and pray and hope for the best. Why I'm tubeless? Why do I carry so many inner tubes? I was on a trip and a rock wedged inside my bike and grated the whole side of the tyre away like a can opener. And I could have got by if I was carrying an inner tube. I thought, I'm tubeless. I don't need to carry any. I'll stay nice and lightweight. I look like a right mug. There's various things we'll talk about later on, how to protect your tyres, but you can't do any of that without a tube. So they're huge, they're a pain in the bottom, but do take one with you. Top tip, you lasso that around someone's seat post, and I've done this a lot of times, and you can drag them up a hill or a handlebar. So I've actually towed my girlfriend up a hill with this, literally around my seat post, around her handlebars. I had to do it for a friend who fell off and almost broke his knee. It was definitely ripped open so he couldn't ride anymore, so I actually towed him back a couple of miles with this setup. So inner tubes are very useful for various other things other than repairing your tyres. So do carry them. Don't go anywhere without an inner tube. You'll feel really stupid when it goes horribly wrong. So up next is this little bag. And this little bag has been with me for many, many years and contains a lot of things. I don't really know what's in the bottom of this, so we're going to discover it today. But if things have gone wrong, I've dived in this bag and I've managed to solve it. I've got my little GoPro here because as soon as I open this, it's going to go whoosh. And I don't really know what's in here, so we're going to go through it together. In here we have a set of tie levers. These are Bontrager ones. I find these really stiff and they don't break. Well, they have broken, but they're pretty damn good. They've been the one that survived the longest. So do carry some decent tie levers. I also have in here some tubeless valves. You never know when you need to replace your tubeless valve. You might even just lose the end off of one, so you need to carry it. And yeah, it's always good to carry a spare one if you're tubeless. Ooh, that was a zip tie. There's quite a lot of zip ties in here of various different sizes. We have some rubber cement, which has probably gone off, probably not worth it. A cleat bolt attached. And what else we've got in here? We have some magic links. So we're going to talk about these more in depth in another video. But they're a way of breaking your chain and be able to join it back together really easily. You can do it all with a chain tool, but it's so much easier with a magic link or power link or whatever you want to call them. I call them magic links. So it's by magic and make everything better. Make sure you're carrying the one which is the correct gears for you, because they come in 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12 speed now. You can't fit 12 speed one to an 8 speed chain. It actually doesn't work. I've tried, or 10 speed to 11 speed. So make sure you carry enough of these. I do actually bring quite a few of these with different gears. So obviously friends I help out as well. And you'll find there's a lot of nuts and bolts in here. And we'll go into why in a bit. This is amazing. So this kind of lives in here. This produces fire. So there's nothing like having a flint in your bag. This stays in there, it stays with my bike, you never know when you need it. I do carry other things to light my stove, but this just stays in there for those real emergency occasions. I also have this bit that's going to go kaboing. I have a couple of gear cables. Well, I have one gear cable in here, often there's one somewhere else on the bike, I've probably used it. But that's the gear cable. I then have a survival whistle, which I'm not going to blow because it's probably full of rubbish. Always carry a whistle. My backpack has a whistle. Obviously don't have a backpack on me when I ride, so make sure I carry the whistle with me. I also have more nuts and bolts. I have a pair of scissors. These are first aid scissors, which can be used for that kind of stuff, or they also use for my tubeless repair system. This is their pre-glued patches, well, they're puncture repair patches. There's a variety of these, and they've probably all gone off a bit. We have more quick power links, 9-speed, that one. More puncture repair patches, and kind of the wrong colour in here. More puncture repair patches. These are the Park Tool ones. I found these super sticky over the time. More tubeless valves. We also have in here more power links. And we have a spare set of cleats. Always be prepared. A spare cleats, which means it comes with a set of bolts as well. That's the spring for brake pads. I normally do carry a pair of brake pads in here, which I was going to get to. This, I'm going to come back to that. And then we have an array of nuts and bolts and dust. We have more power links. I tell you what, even if they're rusty, they'll go in if I need them to. More cleat bolts. I've probably never lost a cleat bolt in my life, but you never know. That's a pin for some brake pads, stop them falling out. Even if you're the threaded one, you can use that. Coming up next is more puncture repair patches, more power links. Blimey, I keep adding them every trip. And these are the more exciting bit in here. Oh my life, look at that. It's stuck together. So these are tubeless worms. And a tubeless worm is where you have a rip in your tyre, which means you need to plug the hole. If you can plug the hole, you can stay tubeless, pump up, and keep going on. So these are worms. I found these particularly fat to go in most holes. So you end up making the hole huge before you can plug it up. You kind of wedge this in, round it up, and you're meant to get this through that hole and then for the next bit. So somewhere in here I did have, and I probably don't anymore, which I need to replace. This is really helpful for me doing. A sheet of kind of rubber, which meant I could cut up the right size plug I wanted for my hole, wedge it in, and yeah, Bob's your uncle. So that's probably my easiest way of doing it. These worms I haven't used yet, and they're quite fat, so I probably need to sort that out for my next trip. But you do need to have one of these little wedgy things. But these are amazing. These are tyre boots. So a tyre boot basically stick on the inside of the tyre. If you've got a puncture or rip in the tyre, which you can't repair, if you put the tube in, it's going to just come out the hole. So you want to put something between the tube and the tyre. So this you stick over that hole, which stops the thing going out of it. I've used these a lot. I've also used inner tube boxes. I've used, well, everyone says a toothpaste tube, but when do you have a toothpaste tube with you, you can cut up. Some people pre-cut up before they go. But I find food packets, so a lot of my dehydrated food, the packet's really, really tough. You can lay that inside the tyre, inflate it, off you go. And that's another reason why I said when I had my can opener all the way around the tyre with the tube, I could have put a tube in if I could repair the tyre, and then it would stop going out. So I had loads of these in here. I could have repaired the whole tyre and kept riding, but I couldn't. So yeah, that was a real error. We have some gear cable ends. These are the plastic bits that go on the ends of the outer, and various other bits of junk, bits of bolt and nut that I could use to kind of wedge up, plug up holes. Also, in this little collection, I'm also going to quickly introduce these, which I've never brought with me. This is a Suguru, which I've read every mountain bike magazine saying, carry Suguru with you. It's a mouldable plasticine that goes solid. I've actually even seen someone completely rebuild their rear mech with it and somehow got home. So I think Suguru is really good. So that is now going straight in that bag. You can buy a pack of 5, or no, more than that. So yeah, pretty cool. I will now carry that with me. Worth giving it a go. Probably wanted to try it before I get into the wild, but here we go. I'll have it on me next time. Also on here, I do also have some tape on a card. This is Gorilla Tape, which is kind of like a duct tape, which is really, really tough. Again, brilliant for tubeless repairs if you want to put around the rim. I actually tubes my tyres up with this. I don't use a tubeless rim strip, I use Gorilla Tape. Super sticky, super tough. But I also do carry a 4-reel of PVC tape. So electrical tape, This I've strapped on Garmin's, I've strapped on things, I've repaired a tent with it as well. This very quickly, carry an assortment of string. So this is for gear cable. This is for tent lines. So you might want to put another tent line out, depends how windy it is. You might want to put a washing line up. You might have to strap your bike back together. When we went to Iceland, me and Ben sat down and we kind of thought, what could possibly go wrong? If the frame snaps in half, how are we going to get home? Because we were going to be stuck for a long time. So we kind of thought various things. We could use like a wooden splint, kind of do it up with rope and tape it up. So this is why I carry so many things that you can kind of get by. Very quickly, I've also got lots of spare straps which go in the kind of repair kit for my bags, or even strapping my bike together, or my backpack, or something, you know. These are great clippy straps. They're used on all my packs, so if something goes wrong, such as a clip snaps, I can actually wrap that around the whole thing, even around the seat post. I did have a rear seat pack go. The things that held it on kind of snapped off. I was riding along at 30 miles an hour doing a rock shoot, and it was kind of flapping around on the tyre. That wasn't so good, and all my stuff pouring out the back of it as I was riding along. So eventually I stopped, and this kind of got me by, so I could kind of lasso that around the whole bag and choke it into the saddle, and it got me to somewhere. So yeah, do carry spare straps and spare Velcro. If you've got Velcro in your bags, carry Velcro. I've got loads of Velcro in another pack somewhere. A variety more zip ties, and the one I was looking for, missed the spoke. So I don't normally carry spokes for necessarily the right reasons. I have destroyed an entire rear wheel in the middle of nowhere. A spare spokes weren't gonna solve that problem, but a spoke I did repair my tent with. So if you cast back to that first video I did and told you about various things, about various trips, I used a spoke, so I kind of bent it in half, cut it into 3 pieces, put it around the tent pole, gaffed it up, or use Gorilla Tape and kind of wrapped it all the way up, and it got me by for another whole week. So I do recommend carrying at least a few spokes, and also use the variety of these nuts and bolts which are in my bag as well. They wrap themselves around the tent pole, and I could tape it all up and make quite a good splint for it. So you never know what might come in handy in this bag. It seems like a lot of rubbish in here, but I pretty much use most of it a lot of the time. And if I'm like a set of cleats, if I'm in the middle of nowhere and I've got clipped shoes, I'm a bit stuck if I can't clip in, aren't I? So it is worth carrying a couple of these spares. Just while we're kind of creating this pool of rubbish on my table. Up next, we've got a couple of solutions. So also in this repair kit will go some tubeless solution. I've used this a lot. If I've got a tyre that's kind of a bit burped or something like that, I can actually replace the solution inside it, pump up and keep going, tubeless. When you're using tubeless, it's probably best to stay tubeless as much as you can, because say you've got a load of thorns inside your tyre, and that's what's great about tubeless, it repairs all those thorn punctures. When you put your tube in, it's going to go bang, because there's so many thorns stuck in your tyre. So if you can stay tubeless, stay tubeless. It's a big pain, but there's a lot of benefits to it, lower pressures and all that stuff, but yeah, you need to carry a solution with you if you're going on a long trip. Lubricant. So we want to talk about lubricant. So this is dry lube. There's dry lube and there's wet lube. Dry lube I've always used all year round, because wet lube stays wet on the chain and collects loads of dirt as you ride along. That dirt is that thick, black, horrible, oozy grease which stays on there forever and gets you covered, but also collects loads and loads more rubbish, especially through mud, and it just ends up a right mess. Dry stays dry on the chain, which means it doesn't collect dirt, but it will wash off if it's rained. So on rainy days, which if you see my videos I have a few, I'll reapply this dry lube throughout the day, up to 3 to 4 times. But my chain kind of stays relatively clean, which doesn't mean that halfway through a trip I try and degrease it or get by with it. So I'm a real dry lube convert, as you can tell. I would recommend it to most people. Wax lubes for off-roading is no good. High-end road, yes. Wax is basically build up a layer of wax on the chain, which means it's really silent. Performance benefits are amazing. But yeah, off-road, it just equals collecting loads and loads of grit, and it acting like sandpaper and wearing your whole drive chain out. So yeah, that is the majority of the stuff which remains in that little bag and kind of very close to it. They go in the bottom of my frame bag or somewhere actually quite hard to get to, because I hope I never have to use any of this stuff. That's the whole idea. It's on my bike and I don't have to use it. This little bag though does fit in a tall bottle. So a tall bottle is basically a water bottle which doesn't have any bit to drink water out of. So this will, obviously when it's packed, go in there, and on my full suspension bike, that is the thing you see in my bottle cage. So all that weight is on my bike. If something goes wrong with the bike, it's with my bike, which is great. So yeah, that's why I keep it on the full sus. But when it comes to my bikepacking bike, it just goes in the bottom of the frame bag. It does get wet. That's why it's covered in grease and it's covered in rust. But it's all survived. And I tell you what, if I have to get that in somewhere, I'm going to get it in. If I'm stuck, I might even spend a day cleaning it up if I had to. So yeah, that's the variety of bits. I hope you found that useful, what's inside my little bag. And we're going to move on a little bit and show you some other things. So yeah, up next is going to be locks. I have a really good saying. If you have to camp somewhere where you need to lock your bike up, you're camping in the wrong place. I'm not going to lie, I do take this little very small thing here. I live in London. My bike with this chain would survive not even 30 seconds because you can snip through it with a pair of scissors. But it's a chain, it's not too heavy. It's got a set of keys as well, rather than the combination which can go wrong. Obviously key can go wrong, but yeah, a little bit easier. And I often use that to lock my bike up in a small town. If I have to, I often just leave it somewhere. Scotland, I've left it in the middle of nowhere for 2 hours and without a lock on, and just it's fine. But also for peace of mind at the evenings, if I'm camping somewhere a little bit more public, or I have a canal, I will just whiz this around the wheel just to stop someone walking off of it. If I want to pick up my bike, they can. I'm not going to carry a D-lock. Yes, if you're touring somewhere else, you might have to carry a more substantial lock. But I'm more of a wilderness rider, so this kind of does. These are quite cool, though. I'm going to quickly talk about these. These are by Hiplock, and they're a tiny little thing where... Oh, sorry, I've got the key out. They're kind of like a zip tie, but a really strong zip tie, which is actually quite useful for various other things carrying around. But you can kind of do things up, and they're really easy. If you lose the key, you could even wedge just two stuff inside those holes and open it up, but Phoebe's not going to know that. So if you need to kind of whiz something up quite nice and tight and securely, you can get by with this. And I also think that might be helpful for something else. So I do find carrying one or two of these, especially if there's two of us, is quite useful. But lock-wise, I wouldn't be carrying anything more than two of those and one of those. That's maximum. And that's if I'm going really somewhere quite public. So yeah, that's a lock. So next on the list is a Mech Hanger. So we're going to quickly cover this because some of your bikes may not use one. But I can tell you what, it's the bit that joins, from this picture, the rear mech to the frame. It's designed to snap and break before your frame does. These are about £15–20. I can tell you what, every single bike in the world uses a different Mech Hanger. There is no such thing as a standard. I wanted to buy an emergency Mech Hanger, which is kind of a universal one, but it only works if you're quick release. If you're not quick release, you're stuck. Because if you've got bolt for axle, which most road bikes are now, or gravel bikes, you need to make sure you have the right Mech Hanger for your bike, and buy 2 or 3 or 5 or 10. And carry one with you at all times. We're in Morocco. 3 of us were riding the same bike with the same Mech Hanger. None of us had one. And on day 1, my friend Ben, he was getting a little bit lively and managed to blow his mech off, snap the Mech Hanger. So it involved the next day a group of kind of 10 locals kind of whittling away from a bit of metal, and they actually kind of made one fit, which was quite incredible, but you're not normally going to find those people to help you out. So carry a Mech Hanger that covers your bike, and make sure your friends do as well, because you can't help them out if you haven't got one. My Genesis though is a steel frame, and the steel frame doesn't have a Mech Hanger. I think because you can bend steel back quite easily, it fatigues a little bit. But aluminium, as soon as it's bent, you bend it back, it automatically weakens. So yeah, do make sure you're covered. Also my Genesis, which you'll notice, it has horizontal dropouts, which does mean with my kind of system, I could go single speed quite quickly, because I can actually make the chain 1 speed, undo those bolts, pull it back, make it tight and do it up. Because that mech is there to provide tension, and if you haven't got the tension because it's all floppy or even falling off, you can't do much about it. But again, I've used chain tools. You make the chain slightly smaller, you pedal it and you push it onto a bigger sprocket. I've done it to many bikes actually. I don't know how many I've done it to, about 10. Full suspension bikes is a bit scary because the chain gets longer and tighter as the suspension compresses. So make sure you fill up that rear shock before you go anywhere. But obviously a rigid bike, you're fine. It might fall off, you just kind of pedal and push it on. We're going to cover more kind of details about survival techniques again in another video. Today I'm just going to show you the things I carry. So last on the list is a pump. And you can do no better than carrying a decent pump with you. One thing you'll notice all of these have in common is they have a tube. And this tube disconnects the valve that's clicked on to the valve and the pump. With you going wild against it, if it clips on straight onto the valve and you push it like this because you're pumping against it, your valve will snap, especially on an inner tube. So you're going to be stuck and you have to redo it all over again. So try and buy one with a tube, which means you're disconnected from that violent pumping you're going to be doing. And also stay away from tiny, weeny little pumps. They look cute, they're super lightweight, but you know what? You'll never ever pump up a 29 by 3 inch tyre, especially if you're tubeless. Why don't I like this pump in particular? There is nothing against the brand at all. I love this brand and I wish they made a nicer ending to the pump. This is one that screws onto the valve, and I personally find as soon as I screw it on, it won't come off. It's super nice and tight, but when you unscrew it, the amount of times I've unscrewed my valve core on tubeless, the valve little part on the end disappears somewhere in the field. I've got my finger on the end of it because if you deflate your entire tyre, it's going to come off the side, which is a big no-no. So yeah, you really are kind of a bit stuck. And I had too many times this has unscrewed my valve core, lost all the air out my tyre in the middle of nowhere, and I was pretty cheesed off. So I don't use this pump. I did replace it, as in I used this before. I thought I fancy a new pump. It's smaller, neater, smart, and I tried that and I've definitely gone back to my favourite. This is the Turbo Morph, which I'll definitely tell you what this one is because this is my favourite pump of all time. Turbo Morph with a gauge. All of these pumps actually, they're pretty cool. And this has lost its foot, so I have to show you on this one. They actually fold out to mini track pumps, which means you put your foot on there and off you go, which I have to say, really nice. This again does the same, so really cool in that way. This one, the amount of friends that borrow this pump, I tell you what, if I've got this pump with me, my friends steal it every time. So Barry, can I get your pump? Because it lets in loads of air per stroke. Gets up really quickly, decent gauge. It's not 1000% accurate, but you know what? It gets close enough to know what pressure you're up to. And it has a really good fitting on as well. So I always carry this. It looks huge, but I tell you what, it's worth it. Really worth it. And if you're on the fatty and you've got to do a few hundred road miles, I will pump my tyres up before I get going. So I might run lower pressures off-road, especially aggressive off-road. And yeah, I'll pump them up to get on the road. If I'm doing a long stretch of road, if I've stuck somewhere and have to go 100 miles somewhere on the road, then yeah, pump it up. Carry a decent pump. You might remember earlier on, we had this little chap here, which I had to be honest, I've been looking everywhere for you, and I can't find a gas cylinder that goes in the bottom. But I'll link a picture here. These screw onto CO2 canisters, and then they have a little regulator. You can let air out. Why don't I carry this? Well, I carry it always with me. I normally carry a cylinder with me as well, but I can't seem to find one to show you guys. It works particularly well in the wet if you're in a big group or you want to get going, just stick a load of air in, and it will also seat tubeless tyres really quickly. This does a pretty good job because it's letting a lot of air in per power stroke. Obviously a smaller pump, you're not going to be letting as much air in per stroke, so you may not get it to seat properly. We'll talk about tubeless another day if you don't know about it, but you need to seat the bead onto the rim, and that's a real key thing you have to do. So these are particularly good for that, but I have found if they miss trigger or kind of you haven't got it screwed on properly and lose all the air, if you're only carrying a CO2 canister, you're going to be stuck again because you still need to carry a pump with you. Because say you've got another puncture and you haven't got another CO2 canister, you'd be stuck. So yeah, I do carry them, but yeah, not that often. I will quickly say, if you can still see the picture of the canister, make sure you're wearing something next to the hand. I literally had some wet gloves on, because it comes with a rubber kind of seal around it. I had wet gloves on, it gets so cold, that canister, my gloves froze to it. So it took a while for them to defrost and get my gloves removed from the canister. So if that was your hand, you'd be in real trouble. Do not hold them with bare hands. It's dangerous. Make sure you've got the little rubber cover of them, or you're holding something that's not wet and dry. Make sure something's dry around it and you'll be safe. So let's bring back the list. I hope you think we've covered most points down there, and probably quite exhaustively. You've seen what's in my little bag of tricks. That has grown over various years, where I've kind of learned different things and thrown more things in there. So we found so many power links in there. I probably keep thinking, don't leave home with that one, put another one in. And I don't often go into the depths of it, but today I've gone in real deep for you. So start building up your own survival kit. Get a little bag for it all, so it's all contained, and you know, whatever time you go for a ride, it goes in the bag, or it goes in the bike, or it goes in your bottle cage. You've always got it with you. You can build that up yourself, particularly for your bike, so look what standards you've got. Please comment below. I want to know what you think I've missed out from my list, and what things we can add together, and what things you want to see in a kind of like a repair video. I'm not going to share how to bleed brakes, but I can show you how to kind of survival top tips, what to do in the wild, and how to stand on your wheel to get it straight, and how to various things I've done over the past. So thank you for watching. Hope you're having happy adventures, and until next time, ciao for now.